All right, fantastic. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am excited for today's Career Quest session. First, my name is Ezra. I work in the Office of Career and Professional Development here at WGU, and I work with employers, bringing them to you guys so that you can hear from their perspectives and, of course, connect you for opportunities. Today's session is working in local government, and as I was telling Tiara earlier, it's a bit of a passion of mine. I'm definitely a community girl here myself. I'm very passionate about kind of local activities and getting involved. And so I wanted to share that with you all today. But we've got some fantastic speakers here today. So it's going to be a sort of a panel session. I'm going to be asking them a few questions, kind of set questions that we have, and then we'll turn it over to a Q&A from the rest of the group. As I mentioned earlier, we are recording this session, so we will email out this recording if you wanted to go back and rewatch it. You can also find all of our recordings on our YouTube channel at WGU Career Services, so feel free to follow us there. And then please be sure to stay muted if you're not talking. It just helps with sort of noise reduction and making sure that everything is coming through clearly. If there is an issue with audio or anything like that, feel free to put it in the chat. I will be monitoring that as well. And then once we get to the Q&A part, you are welcome to raise your hand and come off mute, or you can put those questions in the chat and I can ask them on your behalf as well. So we'll kind of keep it pretty casual if that's all right, wanting to make sure you guys get the most from this session. So without further ado, I do want to introduce our panelists. So today we have Tiara from the city of Bowling Green in Kentucky joining us. We have Alana and Kelsey from Salt Lake City, and we have Josh from New Orleans. And we were just talking about how crazy the weather is because it seems like freezing across the entire state, or states, I should say, across the entire nation. So with that, I wanted to turn it over to our panelists. If you guys wanted to introduce yourself, just kind of your role, a little bit about your background, and I'll popcorn it over to you, Tiara. You're first on my screen, so go ahead.
Okay, Tiara Britt here. I have worked for the city of Bowling Green for a little over 2 years now. My background is in HR. I've got about a little over 10 years of HR experience, but my background is from a multitude of things. I come from really factory side. I've worked at a meat processing company. I've worked for Warren County Public Schools. I've been in logistics. So I've got a little bit of everything, mostly in HR, but that's kind of it. Graduate from U of L, but Kentucky through and through.
Love that. Alana, Kelsey, do you want to jump in? You're next on my little screen.
Absolutely. So my name is Alana Lamb. We are a part of Salt Lake City Corporation here for the city of Salt Lake City. And then we have
And then I'm Kelsey Evans. I've been with Salt Lake City for a little over 3 years, and I actually cover the airport, and the city has over 18 different departments. So we have 7 different recruiters that all cover different areas throughout the city.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been with the city for about 2 years now, a little over 2 years. I moved here from Oklahoma, and then before that is a long story. So I originated from Los Angeles, so that's where I'm originally from. But we ended up here by happenstance, and I'm really enjoying it. So I am specifically the recruiter for the police department, but my background is going to be in law enforcement as a whole. I worked as an HR person for Highway Patrol in Oklahoma, for the Department of Corrections in Oklahoma, and then before that I was a lifeguard, which is a totally different life.
Love that. And then Josh?
Hi, Josh Elliott Iverson. I'm a recruiter for the city of New Orleans. Everything that falls under the umbrella of City Hall, I am a recruiter for, minus police, firefighters, water, and yeah, basically whatever they put on my desk. And I've been in HR about a little over 5 years, and I've been with the city of New Orleans for about 15 months. I was trying to do the math, and I can't remember, to be honest. It's never a dull day.
Perfect. Sounds great. All right. So then for our first question that I have is, what is one of the most rewarding aspects of working for city government? And why should students consider a career in local government? And you are welcome to jump in, or I'm happy to popcorn and call folks out.
Well, I can jump in there. So the questions were, why they should choose this position and what's some of the rewarding aspects. A lot of our departments say how rewarding it is as far as being able to provide a service for the city of Bowling Green. People that are like born and raised here. You get the little quiet thank yous. It's the little things that you do. Like the people that work in our parks department, they don't get, it's not glamorous, but the people that do the trash, that set up the lights, the Christmas lights. And of course, our police and fire department. When you have a government job, it's something that it's rewarding in the aspect of you being able to provide a service. If you have a servant's heart, that's a good place to start. Other than that, other than, depending on how big your city is here in Bowling Green or Kentucky, the big payers or everybody thinks, the best jobs are in the factory. Well, there are other opportunities, other than the factory to, have a place that has good benefits. As far as your work environment, that's completely, different because when you get that hometown feel and you're working for your city government, it's more family oriented. But for the city of Bowling Green specifically, great salary, great benefits. Of course, we're in a position where we have a lower cost of living, so we really connect that way with our employees. But yeah, all kinds of great stuff.
I can jump in for Salt Lake City. We love working for Salt Lake City. It's the capital city of Utah, and we're always doing something awesome and something great. We're hosting the Olympics here in a few years, which is super exciting. And the beautiful thing about working for the capital city is that it has so much to offer. Our benefits are fantastic. The people that we work with are wonderful, and there's a lot of opportunity for career development. So there's a little bit something for everybody. So if you're looking for something that's like the long-term career that'll give you a pension plan, or if you're looking to start over with something new, there's always something that's coming around. It's I find that working for local government is a great way to develop your skills while still giving back to your community. I've always found a sense of satisfaction and security here at the city where I'm able to connect with local residents and get them into the positions that really resonate with them. Um, to consider a career in local government if you're civic minded, if it's something that you enjoy engaging with others in your community, or if you just want a stable career with room for growth and opportunities. It is something that I always feel remarkably stable in my position. I know that there are a lot of industries out there with a lot of high turnover, but I've felt pretty safe in government. So that's what I would recommend.
And I guess I'll finish it up. Well, city government New Orleans is, like I said, never a dull day. But New Orleans kind of sells itself in a sense. But on the serious note, it's really nice to be able to be um, where you're helping not just like if you work in a corporate environment, you're just helping maybe a number. But when you work for the city or in any kind of government, you're actually helping your neighbor. You're helping, when one of the things we ask when we're making conversation, we say, "What neighborhood do you live in?" Oh, I know somebody lives over in this area, and so you really, it's very connected, and you're making a real difference. If you have an issue with your trash can getting stolen, like you can call somebody in the building, or what I mean, your neighbors will just ask you different things, or people in the city, and if you can really put a person with to fix a problem, and that's different than in a corporate environment.
I like that. Yes. All right.
And yes, my trash can was stolen, and yes, I was able to. I
Happens.
called an HR person, and they told me they got me a new one.
A great example. All right, so tell us a little bit about what types of opportunities are available. I think sometimes we have some preconceived notions of like, oh, there's only maybe law enforcement type jobs, or there's only jobs in parks and services, right? But I'd love to hear kind of the types of roles that are available. And are there any maybe new or emerging roles that you're seeing pop up more, or any sort of trends or things that you know is going to be coming, that you'd love to share with folks?
So as far as the city of Bowling Green, I left this out a little bit earlier, but we have 10 different departments. Of course, we've got the public safety piece, for, fire and police, but we also have, like right now, we are hiring, office position. There's office administration. We have a legal team. There's a finance team. There's IT. We have a neighborhood and community services department, where they do a multitude of everything. There's internship opportunities, and of course, Parks and Rec, Public Works. Currently, we are hiring police officers year round. We're hiring dispatch year round. That's one of our upticks is dispatch, as well as engineering positions. More of those, what do you call them? Trade worker positions. So I would say trade workers, engineers, those types of things are on the uptick. And it's kind of funny because, a lot of city jobs, there's not a lot of turnover because this is a good stable job. People keep them for years and years. But, we've hired a lot of office associates. We just hired a crew leader that's going to be, turning into an electrician position. So for us, those are some of the opportunities available.
It's funny that you mentioned engineers. I wasn't gonna mention them because I was looking at WG and didn't see any engineering programs, but we are also hurting for engineers and we love them. So I will say that it sounds like that's going to be a very common theme in government is we're always hiring engineers, and that's civil engineers, electrical engineers, all kinds of engineers. I think like even like IT engineers, like cybersecurity stuff like that. Those are going to be pretty big. Um, for the city of Salt Lake City, we have 18 different departments, as Kelsey said, and they all perform different functions within the city. And that'll include things like our public services department, which takes care of our traffic signals and cleans our streets and is responsible for compliance enforcement. Our sustainability department, which is responsible for waste and recycling. We have the airport, as Kelsey said, and she hires engineers and finance people and IT people. We need people to fix our buildings and maintain our airport. We're very, very proud of our airport. We've got an excellent airport out here in Salt Lake City. And then our community and neighborhood department hires program instructors for teens and children. So, like, currently we have jobs working with our Youth City teen program. So, we're looking for instructors who want to work part time and full time. We're looking for a homeless strategies outreach supervisor. That's another big role that we're looking at filling. We hire prosecutors assistants. We have a real estate project manager position. The city deputy recorder needs to be filled. I have a desperate need for licensed clinical social workers. We have a waste and recycling education specialist. So there's so much that we have to offer. We currently have over 60 positions that are currently available, and new positions open up daily. So the biggest piece of advice that I give anybody looking to get into any type of work really is to check back regularly. When I'm looking for employment because I have to find a new job every few years because my husband's military, I look usually on Mondays and Thursdays. That'll get me all the job postings. So check back regularly, and that'll go with everybody. There's always something going on.
So remind me the question again, please.
Yeah, just types of roles that you are looking to typically fill, or anything that is in high demand, or anything new that you're seeing, anything in that sort of
Sure.
realm of opportunities.
So, City of New Orleans is just like the other panelists are saying, engineers, traffic light signal people, permits, roads, all that kind of stuff. I'd say the different thing that we have is historical cemeteries and historical lights and water systems that are literally pieces of it are 300 years old. And so you got to have the right kind of people to do that. And not everybody has worked in a cemetery that's 300 years old. And they also co-work with not only maintaining the facility, but then we have a lot of movie tourism. So they have to be able to deal with project managers for movies or TV shows, and that's very, very common. The other thing, we have the buildings, so like a lot of the buildings, they want the outside to remain the same. So you have to have engineers, you have to have architects, you have to have all those things, inspectors that know how to and/or can learn how to inspect a building, a boiler system, all this stuff that's just not everyday run-of-the-mill type of stuff. As far as emerging, I would say what I've noticed is every city, they get obviously tax dollars from the city, but they also get probably state. I know New Orleans does, and we also get federal. So you have to have people that can account for that monies and where it's being spent. And then the emerging part that I saw that was very interesting is we're getting data analytics people to be able to report this stuff, to make dashboards, and and to really make it easy for the consumer to be able to look at where their money's going and where we got they hear on the news we got $30 million for this, but they don't know how it really affects them or how it breaks down in our city. A really cool dashboard I saw was all the potholes they're filling. Uh, you know, I think everybody loves that, but it really does help when you have like, I'm sorry, my mind's drawn a blank, but basically if you see like something like a water hydrant going or something like that, those kind of errors that people call in, we have a dashboard of like, we have X amount of calls ahead of you. We have X amount of things they've fixed this year. And that's really something, because you always hear the negative, but when you see something like that, you say, oh, they're actually doing something, so I'd say that's emerging. And to kind of back up what Alana said, we're always hiring. I feel like there's always growth where you can put your kind of personal stamp on it, where you have the autonomy. And there's I don't know if you're going to touch on this, but we have an aging workforce, and most of the people at our organization have been there like 30 years. And so just by default, we have to have newer people to come in and learn and take over. So there's very much job security, and it's, I don't want to say limitless, but it feels like it's limitless on what you can grow into with the organization.
That's amazing. I think for me, I enjoy hearing how each of your cities kind of has its own personality, right? And with it come all of these different types of opportunities. So that's pretty amazing. So with that, kind of, you said, and all of you kind of alluded to, like there's opportunities year round. Is there any sort of times where it's like peak season for hiring, or any sort of recruiting timelines or anything where, like, other than Mondays and Wednesdays, but is there sort of any and any trends that you've seen or when you're hiring that would be really useful for folks to know, especially current students who might be finishing and might be looking next year or something along those lines? When can they be looking for some of those opportunities?
So for the city of Bowling Green, I will say really our peak hiring season is in the spring. We have some, one-offs here and there, but it's really big in the spring because one, we'll have so many recruitment cycles, for certain particular departments. So our Parks and Recreation department in particularly is really good for students. Maybe they're not completely finished yet. There's, other than the full-time, there's part-time opportunities or seasonal opportunities. That also helps you, get your foot into the door, as far as a city employee, because it's something that you can still be hired, transition into something full-time. But parks, the fire department, the police department, I failed to mention earlier as well that the fire department's on the uptick because we are actually building a new fire station. So got to fill that up with some firefighters. Um, and then I will say our second season or months is like right after July, for the fiscal year, when we are approved for all of the new positions that we would like to have. And, we get about a quarter of them, but, it could be anywhere from 20 to 50 new positions. So, we try to get those out and cycle them as soon as we can in July. And then that's when we'll be looking for those people as well. So.
Yeah, and that's a great point. We're kind of on the same cycle, and you'll find that with a lot of cities. Got a lot of seasonal positions, so we'll start hiring for our golf courses in probably actually they're starting to consider posting their jobs now for starting in May. So that's coming up fairly soon. Then we also hire in the summertime for teen programs in the fall, and then we hire in the fall for our ice rink here in the city. And so that'll happen starting in the fall. So those are kind of the seasonal cycles, if you will. And for us, we also, our fiscal year does start in July, so you'll start to see new positions if we do have any. They're usually posted at the end of June to the end of July. And then we also sometimes will also fund positions for later in the year. So perhaps they're not funded until September for some reason. So check in September again for new positions as well. But otherwise, our recruitment is ongoing. And so you can make an argument for if you're looking at another city, for example, that has a very large military population, military families tend to move between May and about July. And so that's peak PCS season for us. And because that's when kids are starting to get out of school, so people will leave before the new school year starts. So a lot of people are leaving their jobs, so it's time to look at new jobs coming in. So something to consider.
So, do we have a peak season in New Orleans for hiring? I would say any day that ends in Y. Uh, no. Similar to what you guys are talking about, we have peak seasons for like the pools. So we need lifeguards and they have, hundreds of people for that. A little bit different in New Orleans, we use laborers to clean up for Mardi Gras, which is started in early January and goes until March. Regular seasons like hiring when people are getting out of college, whether it be spring or fall. December. To that, I would say reach out to the recruiter at the city 2 months or 3 months ahead of time. And then there's always one-offs. Some of our different entities under, like, say, our water department, our fire department. Well, let me back up a little bit. The water department will run a big citywide drive to hire people, and they just do a massive thing at one of the facilities and hire hundreds of people, and they just run it through like a factory and get a lot of stuff done. That's usually in the fall around October. And then our firefighters, police, and our EMS, they run academies. And so it just depends on, they did them in the fall, they did them in the spring, they did them all the time. But it depends on when they're running the academy, and they'll hire 40 people at a time just to try to fill needs. So yes, every day that ends in Y, but also specific other times like everybody else, I think.
Great. Well, thank you for answering that and helping us figure that piece out. So, and this question, it's a little bit broad, so I apologize, but what types of skill sets or qualifications are you looking for? You know, definitely in some of these roles, you can do general, or if you want to, break it up a little, but anything in particular that you're looking for, or anything that you've noticed, any sort of skill sets that you've noticed in particular, where like, oh, people will succeed if they have these types of skill sets or these types of qualities. Anything like that you want to share with us?
Well, I will just be honest with you guys. So here in our community, we're still growing, we're a little bit behind than everybody. It is Kentucky. But for the most part, our jobs only require a high school diploma. We have jobs starting out $20 an hour, high school diploma or a GED. But it depends on, it's a little bit specific depending on the job. Most of the jobs that you can do here, even in different salary grades, still GED or high school diploma. But if you're wanting to get into like a director's role or, something that's managerial is when we usually start, requiring some type of further education. But if you think about it, there's way more, some of the lower salary start entry level positions available for most cities or municipalities than there are, for the directors, the different types, engineers and up. But most of them are, laborers, camp counselors for the water park, in athletics, referees, scorekeepers, recreational staff assistants. All of those things. And again, those usually start fairly high. But in addition to that, because, maybe again, somebody just fresh and new, just graduating, wanting to kind of get their feet wet, just being, what is the word I'm looking for? Just being adaptable. Because I am a prime example of that. I'm probably about to tell my age, but y'all just erase it right after I say it. But back in late 90s, early 2000s, I started as a camp counselor. I was a camp counselor for 10 years. I worked at one of the camps, and then I worked at the Russell Sims Aquatic Center. Then I had to get a big girl job upon graduation. But I think I left a great impression. I said I really love working for the city. I love the environment. I love the people. Unfortunately, some of the people were still here 30 plus years, and I'm like, dude, when's it over? I mean, you got to let somebody else come through there. But so when the opportunity came back, I left a decent impression. So I had the opportunity to come back in an HR role. So that was my footprint, or my little starting point for my plug, when I wanted, a different type of job. So I had to adapt from, a fun Parks and Rec job to, learning a little bit about HR, being in the office. But as long as you can adapt, to a few little other things, because a lot of stuff you're going to learn is going to be hands-on. They can't teach you everything at school, trust me. But if you're adaptable, transparent about what you're looking for as an employer, we try to be transparent. That'll take you further than anything that a book will teach you. I'll tell you that.
That's all great. We're kind of in the same boat, which is, I find that our hiring managers are really looking for people with either technical skills or some sort of administrative experience are really kind of highly sought after. Our hiring managers love to see people with government experience, but it's not totally required. We've got lots of fantastic people who work for us who have never worked for government before. We welcome candidates from all walks of life, and ultimately the hiring managers are most likely to hire candidates who are engaged throughout the hiring process. They're communicative to our hiring managers. They're receptive to information that they're receiving, and that they're adaptable and flexible. I always tell people when I first moved to Oklahoma, I had just finished my bachelor's degree, and I applied for well over 60 jobs, and this is 2018. I applied for 60 jobs, and I got 3 interviews. One was as a procurement agent for a casino game building company. One was as the aquatics director for the city of Oklahoma City. And the third was for the human resources management specialist position at the Department of Corrections. You can do a lot of things with the degree that you have. You can open up a lot of doors by taking other positions that are maybe a little unconventional. And ultimately, what started me on my journey here as a recruiter is I got that job at the Department of Corrections as a human resources management specialist. So being communicative and open to suggestions or to different opportunities is ultimately what's going to get you the job that you want.
Great. Josh?
Very similar in New Orleans, I would say, to what the other panelists are saying. I wrote down willingness to roll up your sleeves, being curious how stuff works and trying to, learn, and being patient in the process. But similar to what Alana was saying, a lot of our roles will just say bachelor's degree, or say business, and it'll give you, whatever the caveat is. So for people who maybe already have a bachelor's and they're still working, they're getting a master's or something like that at night. That's what I personally did. You can get in the door and you can try something for 6 months or a year, and then when you get your master's degree, it opens a whole new opportunity for you, especially for the city of New Orleans. But you can start in one area. I find it especially for accountants, but for a lot of other departments, where they can start in tax, or they can move to revenue, or they can move to finance, or they can just move and be a budget person. And because of it, for the city of New Orleans being a very decentralized organization, you can work in these functions in different parts of the organization, and you don't ever have to take a pay cut. And a lot of times, if you were to try to do that in corporate, you would have to take a pay cut, and not many people can do that. So I find that that's a really good thing. And the only other thing I would say about job requirements is that in New Orleans we have what's called civil service, and uh, they have specific standards of what you can or cannot do. And the simplest way I explain that is, if you're applying to be a nurse, well, you have to have a nursing degree. Um, if there is a comma or an or, then yes, apply. If there isn't, then we really can't do anything about that. And it's frustrating, because we want to get the job filled and we want to be able to help people, but that is the only limitation. So I always tell people, don't waste your time, applying if we can't prove that you have those qualifications. But work with the recruiter, because they're going to try to help you any kind of way possible to get through the system, so to speak. Yeah, that's it.
Perfect. And that, Josh, actually leads me to my last sort of question. Any tips in making your application stand out? And I'm sure processes will differ depending on the city, but just thoughts on, cover letter. Do you like those? What do you like to see in the resumes? Are you using ATS systems, for example, or not? Just kind of wanting to see what your process is like, and, what sort of applications really stand out on your side.
So for us, I will tell you, I've started to see a trend a little bit different. Um, People are still people, so I'm going to put that out there. I would say one of the things that I've seen a lot of that may or may not help you. I see a lot of resumes with a lot of pictures of themselves, a lot of resumes with personal information, as far as, Emily Stewart, I love pizza. Um, maybe not, maybe leave that out. The other thing, the pictures, they are, I see these, glamorous headshots, but what that sets you up for, in my opinion, is being able to be discriminated against. You're showing all of those things are not supposed to discriminate against in HR. You're showing, hopefully not your age, like I am. I need to work on that. But your race, all of those things that we shouldn't be looking at, and you shouldn't form a bias. You're putting yourself in that predicament, to get discriminated against and not, possibly move forward. So I would say that, leave that stuff off your resume, your cover letter. And just, nothing's wrong with going a little bit extra, but you got a resume where you got 3 pages and then it's 3 pages of references. There's some AI systems and some ATS systems that'll kick you out just for having too much links. So, stick to the meat and potatoes. I'm Kentucky. I don't know how else to say that. Stick to the meat and potatoes, in your resume, your cover letter, possibly even 1 page if you can get it down to that. But, your employer wants to see, like Josh was mentioning, okay, we're looking for this. Do you have this certification? Do you match this degree? Do you have at least a high school diploma? But nothing wrong with your format or whatever you think is beautiful. But as far as that is, leave those pictures out. Don't make it too long, but just do the best that you can, without divulging too much of your personal information, so you can have a better shot.
One of my favorite stories is recently I had somebody submit his resume with his wife's age on it, which I thought was super interesting. Um, he did submit it to me, I think, in a like notepad version of a doc. So I just erased it and then uploaded it to our applicant tracking system for him. However, it does kind of lead to the point, which is make sure you do have a good high quality resume. And when I say high quality, take the time to convert your resume to a PDF. PDFs are very stable, and they will open up on almost every browser. We still get people who submit their resumes in like a dot notes document, which is I think an Apple product specifically that I cannot open. And if I can't open it, there's no way for me to tell you if you qualify, which means you're going to be declined. So, making sure that you have a PDF resume because everybody can open it. Word documents are also fine, but I recommend a PDF document will kind of cement your formatting so it doesn't show up funky for people. I also recommend steering away from screenshots of resumes. So don't, screen capture it and then upload it as a JPEG. That also happens a lot. I did have somebody who opened up Paint and wrote no resume, sorry, and then sent the screenshot of that, which was also great. Highly recommend against that. And so make sure you're tailoring your resume to the position for which you've applied. If you are applying for a administrative technician position, if you're looking for something that's a little bit more administrative, then I probably, it's not going to be very helpful for me to know that you've worked at McDonald's. We appreciate that you have some experience, but make sure that whatever experience that you're including is related to the position for which you're applying. I always tell people that the one-page resume is great if you can get it, but we'd much rather have a 2 to 3 page, well-written resume that has all of your related experience and education on it. So if it's got to be 2 to 3 pages, that's totally okay, but please make sure that it is all directly related to the position for which you're applying and that there isn't a ton of like gaps in your resume. And by gaps, I mean like literal physical gaps. There isn't like a whole bunch of white space littered throughout your resume. The number of times where I'll get a resume and the only thing on the first page is just the name, which isn't great for saving paper. And so that's something to consider. And then make sure you're reviewing the job descriptions and really tailoring your descriptions of your jobs to the position that you're applying for. If the position is going to require you to use technology, then consider how you use technology in your previous roles and emphasize those things. So as a recruiter coming here to Salt Lake City, I just finished an implementation for Workday, and I knew that so did Salt Lake City. So I really leaned heavily into that on my resume because I wanted to show them not only do I have experience implementing the system, but I have used it and I'm very knowledgeable on it and I can be an excellent asset. And it's part of the reason that I was hired here. So those are some of the things to consider is making sure that you have a really good quality resume because you're going to use it everywhere. Making sure that you're steering away from funky backgrounds and cool text and beautiful floral fonts or whatever. Steer away from all that stuff. We just want to be able to read what you got and move forward. So that's, I think, kind of the big highlights when it comes to resumes.
I feel like we could do a whole another hour on resumes, what do and what not to do, or do at least a guide. I back up 100% what the other panelists say. The only other thing was somebody told me one time, and I really had to drill in and figure out why, but don't put your zip code or your street that you live on. You can put Jane Smith, Houston, Texas, and that's all somebody needs to know. They don't need to know, like, so I live in New Orleans. They need to know that I live in Metairie, which is a suburb of New Orleans, because unfortunately, again, people discriminate. And you don't want I don't even know how to say it, nickname on the resume or in the email address. or what your friends called you on the street or what your cousin called you. Not known MySpace, and yes, that has happened. But it just, if you were to do something like that, reason being is it sets you apart and you're like, they're not professional. I'm not going to go anywhere forward with it. It's going to go in the trash. So it's not to be necessarily rude, but then there are unscrupulous people that will take that address, and I'm sure, we've all heard horror stories of in HR departments or with people where you just don't put it on there. There's no reason. When you get past, I should say, the interviews and stuff like that, when you're filling out the actual information for the job, put it in there because it's going to be protected under, the employee system and hidden, and only the right appropriate people will see it. And yeah, I would say just if you're in accounting and you're applying for accounting roles, go Google 5 other accountant resumes and copy that one, or engineer, or whatever the subject, whatever the discipline is, because as a recruiter, we can tell you that IT people have a different resume than an engineer, than an HR person. And none are right or wrong. It's just to that specific discipline. But nobody needs flowers or pictures or flowery prints, or that you like pizza, or, we can go on and on about that stuff. But just, simple, you don't have to be unique in those things. Basic is better. Basic is better.
Yeah.
Great.
I think I'd like to reiterate kind of what you said is addresses, I believe, are a holdover from a previous time when we could only get to contact you by mailing you things. No longer the world we live in, which is fabulous. Don't put your address, don't even put your city, don't even put your state, because ultimately you're applying for a role that exists in the place that you're applying for. And we assume that you're going to have to move here for it. And if that's something that you're willing to do, it doesn't really matter where you're coming from. And so feel free to leave it off just on the top of your resume, put your name, a phone number, somebody can contact you, an email address if you need to, and that's kind of it. And I do also recommend, just to piggyback off of what Josh said, was make sure that your email address is something you're okay with people seeing and saying out loud. I did have somebody who applied, and her email was something like, Tiffany's mommy at gmail.com. I'm going to read that out loud to you to make sure it's still accurate. And I would love to not have to say the word mommy in the workplace. So, make sure that if you don't already have one, please set up an email address that is professional and easy to read off to people, so that way when they are looking at your email addresses, that it's legible, it's easy to understand, it's easy to communicate to other people.
Great. Oh, these are all some really good tips. I did put in some of our WGU resume resources for anyone who is interested. And of course, our career advisors do resume reviews. So if you wanted to get someone else to take a look at your resume, you are welcome to do that. But I loved all of these great tips, so much good information. And I do, just given the time, I wanted to open it up for anyone else who might have questions. If you wanted to, again, you can use the chat and drop it in there and I'll read it, or you can raise your hand and I'll be able to just call on you and we'll kind of go in order there. I don't believe I missed any from earlier. Looks like there's some chatter about PDFs versus Word documents. Do some systems prefer Word documents? Is that, because I know sometimes they won't even let you, just depending on where you sort of apply. Is that the case?
Depends on the applicant tracking system. Some places will only accept PDFs and Word documents and text documents. Our system seems to accept everything. And so what it doesn't do is enable me to open it. So I can see that you've uploaded something and I have no idea what it is.
Mhm.
Yep. Anyone have any questions? And I know nowadays you can, if you do the print, like you can basically save a PDF through that functionality. You don't even have to have
Yep.
those systems
If
in your
you
computer.
just when you go to print, you can do like Microsoft print to PDF, and that's fantastic because you'll print it out, it'll create a PDF, and you'll look at it and you go, "Yep, that's exactly how it would look like on paper." And then when you upload it places, that's what other people will see as well.
Yep.
I would mention, maybe it's intuitive for everybody, but I'll say that it's happened a lot, or that I've received a lot from people. When you do your resume, just put, very simply your name, Bill Smith, resume. I've gotten all kind of random documents that people are trying to send, and it's accident, of course, but just make it easy on yourself. You can put resume, or you can put, Bill Smith certification XYZ. Most places will have a portal that you can upload multiple documents or transcript. Just be, again, basic is better. You don't have to be fancy.
All right, and it looks like we do have a question here. With the benefits being decent and letting it know that there are people who stay for 30 plus years, how would you suggest people navigate that roadblock to advancement?
I think that's a great question, because that is kind of a chronic problem in government, is people will get very happy with where they are and they'll just kind of stagnate. I would kind of emphasize that fortunately, especially when you get into some of these bigger cities, government isn't going to be stagnant. So you won't always have just 10 positions within the government. You will always be growing with your city. So I would say that considering moving into a different field. So maybe if you're a recruiter like I am, but you're kind of also familiar with other HR things, maybe moving into a different HR discipline. If you're in accounting and you only do accounts payable, maybe you move into accounts receivable because another position has opened up. So opening up those horizons will also enable you to advance that way. So I'd say that although it can be daunting if, Kelsey and I start here at the same time and we both go until we're 100 years old, how am I ever going to usurp her? That can be kind of challenging. However, I'd say that there's always going to be growth.
Also, like our city in particular, we do have shadowing opportunities, and that's something you can even reach out to other departments if you're interested in possibly pursuing a different career. We will help you provide like information to that manager and see if they're willing or able to start that shadowing program with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
great. Josh, Tiara, anything to
I was losing my train of thought. So God forbid anything happens, to employees, but employees get injured, they're sick. So along with those shadowing opportunities, there's also opportunities for fill-ins. Then you receive the fill-in pay. That also gives you an opportunity. We have employees that think they kind of want to roll, and then once they had a taste of it to fill in for this 3 to 6 month period, they're like, you know what, I was okay where I was, or maybe I just need to, reverse and go a different direction. So those opportunities are available for you as well.
That's great.
I want to piggyback, I guess, off of what Alana said. Depending on the city, if you're in a small town of, let's just say the staff is maybe 50 people. Well, yeah, the brass tacks is that it's going to be limited and there's just not going to be a lot of space to go. But we at the City of New Orleans, we have over 5,000 employees, and that's not counting our police, our firefighters, our water department, our housing authority, which all of those have HR. I mean, they're not just that function; they have all the other background stuff going too. So, yeah, reality. Some people do sit there for 30 years, but you can take a side way. Go try a different discipline. It's only going to make you stronger, and then you can potentially go up, or you can learn a different skill. You really can stay with the government agency or within the government agency for your entire career. We have people that will go mainly from the city to either the police department, not as an acting police officer, or they'll go to the water department and then they come back. It's very possible. and you just have to pay attention and be tuned into what's going on and where the roles are happening. And it's not a bother to talk to the HR people or the recruiters and say, hey, what's going on? And do we know anything? We're not going to usually slip up and say anything we're not supposed to say, but we can kind of give you an idea of what's happening. Yeah, I think you can definitely do it, and pay attention. If somebody's they've been there 30 years, well, they're not going to be there for 40 more years, like, so you can kind of, but if somebody's been there in a job 10 years, well, yeah, maybe you should try to look a different avenue. Yeah, that's it.
Great. All right, let's see another question here. Say the application required written answers. Would not including those answers affect your chances?
Yes. If the application requires you to have something, you need to upload it or you will not be considered. So highly recommend, if they say you need a certain certification and you don't upload it, you won't be considered. So make sure you include everything that the application requires.
Yeah, we've seen the difference in applicants recently. Like we've seen an uptake in applicants, and because of that, we do use that to screen people out. So if you don't complete it, then we're not even going to look at your application, like Alana said.
Absolutely.
I want to interject if that's okay. 100% what they're saying, and I've had in different companies, different organizations, managers say if you don't follow the basic stuff on the application side, you can't follow directions, throw it out. And so it's not to be rude or anything like that, but even so much as if a recruiter sends you an email, like I send out, and I'll say, hey, I'd like your resume. I'd like to have a telephone screening with you, and click on my link to set a time or whatever, and people will email back and put a time, or they'll put a phone number. And it's not that I think they're trying to do something against me or to be a problem. It's that they're not reading because, maybe they're busy or whatever. But just stuff like that, you just have to pay attention. And if it asks for something that's required, then do it. Because otherwise, you're going to just get, knocked out of the running.
All right, consensus there. Follow the directions. Let's see here. When listing technical skills on my resume, should I include skills I have a basic understanding of, or only those I'm proficient in? Is less or more better? That's a good question.
I have a controversial opinion. Other people are going to overinflate their skills. And I think that if you have a skill, you should mention it because it's going to be important. And if you would like, you can include basically like a sliding scale. I've seen these where they'll say, if there's like 5 stars, you say I'm a 2-star proficiency in X skill. Whatever skill you do have, it is important to mention because if you don't mention it, your competition will, and they may be hired instead of you.
I completely agree. And what you'll find out is that any place that you work at, we're all going to have our own systems. So we've got to teach you when you get there. So, our ATS system, if we hire anyone else in HR, it's going to be different from somebody that, works at the water company here. An office associate position for our parks department, they need to have really good Excel skills. They need to learn how to use VLOOKUP and pivot tables. But an office associate at the police department, they just might need basic secretarial. So I agree with Alana. List those that you have because, a little bit goes a long way. And we will also, if you don't feel like you're, completely confident in what we're asking you to have, we're still going to have to teach you our system. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great.
I agree with that. Put it on there. If it's, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like say Microsoft or Google Suite, and you're putting just like basic or intermediate, kind of like what Alana was saying. It's good to put it on there because be able to speak to each one of those things. But then if the person says, well, hey, I see you have basic, if the recruiter says, I see you have basic on this, tell me some of the stuff you did. Have an example. Because as a recruiter, we're looking at the resume, and if we've never met you before, then it's very one-dimensional. And so we want to be able to good or bad how it sounds, we want to be able to package and sell you to the hiring manager. This person needs this, this, and this, and they have it. Or maybe you have all basic and you're afraid to put it, but you don't know that maybe on the other side of that, the hiring manager says, I need somebody who will listen and learn everything I'm trying to put down and teach them. They just need a basic understanding. Well, then you're the perfect candidate, you know. Or we're going to be using this system in the future, and you know, maybe person puts down their Workday or they put down SAP or something like that, and you only know a basic. But if you know a basic and they're going to do it in the future, which there's no way you would know that, but if they're going to do it in the future, well, then you've got a leg up on everybody inside of the company, you know. So there's a lot of, I think, a lot of good reasons why to put it on there, and just don't lie, you know. Just put the truth, and that's it.
Great. And then I think we have time for one last question, so I apologize. But is it challenging to get a job at the local government at the age of 50 or above?
I just dropped in the chat there.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is, no, it's not hard at all. I don't think anyways. So first of all, we're not allowed to discriminate based on your age anyways. So we will never discriminate against you for being older. That's not something that's important to us. If you have this skill set, it does not matter how old you are. One of my I call her my favorite police officer, and she's totally okay that I share this. She started as a police officer in her 50s. She was a bodybuilder and a personal trainer, and then she decided she wanted to be a police officer one day in her 50s. So you can do anything as long as you have the skills and the drive to do it.
And same here. Our last recruitment cycle for firefighters, we hired, I think, 13. One of those gents, he had worked here for 20 years previously as a firefighter. So he came back at the ripe age of 56, went back through the academy, did it all, had a little bit of an injury, but still, you know, you can definitely do that. We don't discriminate based on age or anything. And like Alana said, you know, if you've got those skills, that's all we're worried about. Can you do the job? We had a lady here. She's in her late 70s. She has worked for the city for 65 years. Her job has changed over the years. She was more in a part-time role, but she is just now coming up on retirement, and she's the sharpest finance person the city of Bowling Green has ever had, and they'll attest to that. So I don't know exactly when she got her start here, but she's been with the city for a total of 65 years. So if you can do the job, you know, we're here for it. That's the brass tacks for us. Can you do the job?
Fantastic. All right. Well, we are at time, and I apologize. I know there were a few other questions in the chat, but I just wanted to say thank you so much to our panelists for such great answers and such great insights. I feel like I learned a lot. And I hope you guys did as well. So thank you so much. I don't know if you are comfortable, feel free to drop your LinkedIn's, or I'm happy to share that information out afterwards. I will follow up with everyone again with the recording, as well as like a 2-question survey that just provides a little bit of feedback for our team as we continue to plan more of these sessions with employers in the future. So thank you all so much for joining us. Look for that email from me. And again, thank you so much to our panelists for such a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was fun today, guys.
Thank you. Feel free to share my information. I'm happy to help. And if y'all come to New Orleans, say hello.
Yes.
Thank you guys.
On my list.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks.